Yeah, greetings to all. I think in our last video, we left this poem A Legend of Northland at stanza 10. Let's have a small recap of it. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away. So she put them on the shelf. Now, this speaks of this woman's character, that how selfish and miserly this woman is. You see, when she has to eat, she always felt that the amount that she was eating was too small for her. But when the same amount when has to be given to someone else, she felt it was too big amount to be given away. So what did she do? She kept all the breads and the cakes that she had baked so far, as beat as thin as the wafer, all of them in the shelf back. Right? And she did not give any cake to hungry, fainting, very weak Saint Peter. Right? Okay. Let's go to the next stanza, stanza 11. Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint. And surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. Provoke, that means cause someone to get angry. Enraged him. You see, Saint Peter was very hungry. He did not eat anything the whole day. He was roaming and guiding people how to live. How should they lead life? He was teaching all the values that people should have. What are the good values? The good values like, keeping honesty, being loyal, being generous to others, have a big heart, help others, especially to those who are in need, right? You don't have to give everything to everyone. But yes, when a needy turns up to your doorstep, you must be able to give him something without returning him empty-handed. That is our moral responsibility. But look at this woman. Saint Peter was very hungry. He was feeling very weak. And this selfish woman was not ready to give him even the smallest wafer-like cake that she had baked. This behavior of this greedy woman enraged the saint. He was a man of God, a disciple of Jesus Christ, who was spreading the teachings. He was a messenger, right? But this woman failed to recognize him, and perhaps anybody would have come in place of Saint Peter. She would have perhaps behaved same. Right, let's see in the stanza 12. What did she do? Now, she has done what she was. Now, what she has to face? She has to face the music of the mistake that she has made. This is not a mistake, it's a crime. Not giving anything to the needy, especially in the need of hour. In the time when somebody needed something, and when she was very much able to, she could afford to give few pieces of cake or the bread just for the Saint Peter's survival, which she failed. Let's see in stanza 12, what did he do? And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter. That means you are far too selfish to have food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. Here, all these three things, food, shelter, and fire, refer to the comforts of life. Yes, somebody who has been privileged enough to have the blessings of God. What all the necessities, the basic necessities one should have to survive, to sustain their life in the adverse conditions is the food, the shelter, and the clothes, isn't it? This woman was blessed with everything. In the freezing cold, she had the warmth of the hearth, the warmth of the fireplace. She was blessed with a house, a small cottage. And she was also blessed. There was much, ample food for her to survive. And she was very much able to give food to others also. So all, you see, Saint Peter saw all these things. But he did not like the behavior of this lady, stingy lady. So what did he say? You are the one who does not deserve any blessings of God, given by God. You see, he cursed the woman and said that she was very selfish. She could only think of herself. She did not deserve to live like a human being. He added that God had given her food, shelter, the fire to keep her warm in this freezing cold. But she had become so selfish because she kept all the resources reserved only for herself. She did not want to share it with anyone. Right. Next stanza. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food. Scanty, that means very little. By boring and boring and boring all day in the hard, dry wood. See, he curses the woman. He says, the way you make me suffer, you did not even give me the small wafer-like food. You also will suffer. You will also look for food the way you made me to look for food. You will become a bird and you will get the food how birds eat, the scanty food, very little amount of food. And that scanty amount of food also have to be looked for by you. You will not get it straight away to your platter. How you will get it? You will be boring, pecking onto the wood that is very hard, nearly breaking your, the hard wood through the very sharp beak. See, Saint Peter cursed the woman that because you did not offer me any food, hence she would become a bird. Because she did not deserve the human form. The human is one of the most beautiful creation of God, who has mind to think and heart to give. She shall become therefore a bird, and just like birds, how the way they build their houses by boring into the wood, and they hardly can collect very little food. How? By working very hard all day, by flying here and there. Similarly, this old stingy lady also would have to work hard in the dry wood all day long, and she would get very little food and make a very small place for her living as her accommodation, like the birds do. Okay, this is how the woman now has to face the music. So what happened next? In the stanza 14, after being cursed like this by a man of God, hungry Saint Peter, then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed into a bird. Okay, she has been cursed to transform herself, turn from a woman into a bird. As soon as Saint Peter cursed the woman, she did not get a chance to speak a word for herself, to defend, to justify herself, because that very moment she flew up to the roof through the chimney and came out in the form of a bird. Which bird? A woodpecker. Saint Peter's curse had converted this old stingy lady into a woodpecker. Right? She had to pay the price for her being very greedy and voracious. Let's see in the next stanza what happened with this woman who was then turned into a bird. Stanza 15. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same. But all the rest of her clothes were burned, black as a coal in the flame. Scarlet refers to very bright red color. You see, like a crimson color, crimson red. Okay, what does the poetess say here? When the woman turned into a bird, at that time, see, when she was baking a cake in the hearth, she was wearing a red color small cap on her head. Perhaps the cooks, those cooks who put a cap to cover their hair. So this woman was wearing a red color cap on her head. So this cap was still there on the bird's head, because you can see the red color plumage on the woodpecker's head, a very thin, very small. So that remained as it is. See, when the woman turned into a bird, at that time she was wearing a red colored cap on her head, which remained as it is. You see, so when she came out of the chimney, all her body, because of the heat in the chimney, became black. But her head top remained red because she was wearing a red cap. So, that is why the woodpecker's color, his head is red, and the color of his body is black. See, the poetess gives this reason also. She is justifying why and how the woodpeckers have come into existence and what is their color because of this reason and the way they are. Right. Stanza, the last stanza. And every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring for food. You see, country here refers to the countryside, the rural areas of Arctic region. See, people who live in the countryside, even those small children who go to school, they all have seen this kind of birds in the woods. They see that this woman who's converted into woodpecker stays there all day and keeps on digging onto the wood with her sharp beak. Why? Because she has to collect food. Whenever any child sees this kind of bird, then his elders tell the child this story of how the woodpeckers have come into existence. They say that the bird used to be a woman earlier. She was a very greedy lady, and so she was cursed by Holy Saint Peter and turned into a bird. They get a teaching that they should not be greedy in life. That means, what is the teaching that comes, the moral that comes? What all we all have learned from this? Excessive greed is injurious. This poem teaches us that the comforts of life are deserved only by those who are able to offer it to others, those who are able to share them with those who are needy and not so privileged like you. Because God showers His blessings on those people who are generous at heart, magnanimous enough towards others who are not privileged, those who don't have comforts in life. Because these comforts of life are to be earned. I am repeating this. These comforts of life are to be earned through your good conduct, good behavior. They should not be asked. They have to be earned. You should not ask God to make your life comfortable. You should have your karmas as good as, not like the old ladies. You help others and you shall be helped. This is the simple funda and the mantra here which is taught through this ballad. The poem conveys the message that as human beings, we should have positive qualities like, affection, love towards others, the fellow feeling, the sympathy, the generosity, the spirit of, above everything, a sense of sharing your things. The poet is also brings forth the idea that people with negative, inhuman values like this selfish lady, the greed, the cruelty, this sort of people are ultimately going to be punished by God. We cannot get away by saying that if I have certain things, they can only belong to me, and therefore I don't share it with any. This is a wrong concept, a wrong attitude. This is entirely one's choice not to share your things to others. But technically, we all should be able to give as much as we can. The small greedy lady was showered with many things, many comforts of life in that freezing cold. But upon receiving a needy at her doorstep, she failed to share all those comforts with him. Therefore, such action of her was not appreciated and liked by Almighty God, and he was punished. She was punished by him. To teach her a lesson, he turned this lady into a bird who will have to look for food and water everywhere, same like the saint had to do, so that she could feel the same pain and the same suffering of others. You see, ever since the woodpecker keeps on boring and boring, the tree stumps to look for his food, to make a hole into it, to make his own accommodation. This is how the woodpeckers have come into existence on this earth. People say it is a legend, it is a folk tale, it's a folklore. Whether it is true or not, no one knows. But it certainly leaves us all with this beautiful message that we all have to be generous and not greedy like this lady. If you are, you may have to face the music. Right? Okay. Now, we need to go to the question answers. Let's take a look at it quickly. Okay. Let's take a quick look at the glossary. Legend is an old traditional story which is told by, one generation to the other. Saint Peter was an apostle of Christ, as discussed earlier. Provoke, that means to make someone angry. Let's go to the first question. What does it ask? Thinking about the poem, I'm here on page number 67. First question. Which country or countries do you think the Northland refers to? Right. As discussed, when we were talking about the first stanza, I gave you some idea about the countries that are there in the North Pole. The Northland refers to the region around the North Pole, right? Which is extremely cold. It could be any country like, USSR, that is Republic of Russia, Canada, Greenland, Norway, Iceland, Sweden, so on. Second question. What did Saint Peter ask the old lady for? And what was the lady's reaction? Right. Saint Peter asked the lady to give him a cake as he was very hungry because he was roaming about the globe, lecturing people how should they live. The lady did not give him any piece of cake out of those that she had baked. Instead, she baked the smallest one for him, and that too she did not give him and put it back into her shelf. How did he punish her? Well, Saint Peter was very angry at her attitude and behavior. He punished this selfish lady by turning her into a woodpecker bird that had to bore into the dry, hard wood all day long to get the food and the shelter so that she can realize the pain of the needy person. Right, number 4. How does the woodpecker get her food? Well, the woodpecker gets her food by boring and boring onto the hard wood and making holes into it. Number 5. Do you think that the old lady would have been so ungenerous if she had known who Saint Peter really was? What would she have done then? See, if the old lady knew who Saint Peter was, then she would have not been ungenerous. You see, stingy people are like this, greedy people are like this. They go to any length to fulfill their greed. If she knew that Saint Peter was sent by Jesus Christ in order for her to get more blessings and more comforts in life, she would have never done it, because she knew this thing somewhere in the back of her mind, that if I will be ungenerous to this Saint Peter, he would definitely curse me. And if I satiate him, if I give him more food, he will bless me. So she, being a greedy lady, would have not been so ungenerous. Had she knew this thing, that Saint Peter was sent by, he was an apostle of Jesus Christ. You see, on the other hand, she would have served him well. Okay, well, greedy people are like this. Number 6. Is this a true story? Which part of this poem do you feel is the most important part? Well, you can relate to the most important part. The main essence of this poem is, perhaps because this is a folk tale, you see, this cannot be a true story. This cannot be a true story of how woodpeckers have come into existence, because none of us have seen Saint Peter cursing a lady and a lady turning into a bird. None of us have seen this, so this is only a folklore. The point in the story where the woman is turned into a woodpecker, this is very important part, because this woman is being cursed for her silly actions, for her, weak behavior. This is so because the punishment always teaches everyone the lesson to be generous. Why do we punish criminals? Because we want to teach them a lesson. Well, not always it is possible that even after giving the sentence and punishment, one is going to learn a lesson. But a smart person, when punished, they learn a lesson and they never repeat their mistake. Right? Okay. Number 7 says, what is a legend? Why is this poem called a legend? I have already discussed it in the beginning of the poem, that a legend is a popular story from past which is believed to be true by people, but it cannot be verified. You cannot check the authenticity of this story, whether it is true or not, whether characters were there or not. But it does contain a moral which is narrated to the children, to teach them a lesson in their life. This is a story, a moral story. Okay. Now, number 8. Write a story of a legend of the Northland in about 10 sentences. Now, I leave this question to you. You have to write this story in your own words without copying it from anywhere. You use your own thoughts and write a short story, a brief story. This is nothing but summarizing the poem, okay, in your own words. The other 2 questions are not to be done in your CW. Very important instruction. You have to write all the questions of thinking about the poem, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th. Not the other 2 questions in question 2. Only first question will go in your CW. And the VBQ that I will give you during the live session, that also should go as your extended writing task. Okay? I want you all to learn this poem well. This is a very easy poem and a beautiful message that is left and conveyed by this ballad to all of us. Right? It is a good story for you to tell your younger siblings. You can sometimes tell this story to them so that they can learn they can develop this sense of being generous towards the needy people. They should learn this. Right. I'm going to finish this video here, right? And I want you all to keep learning. You have your difficulties, you have any questions to ask, please write them somewhere, note them down, and we can discuss about them during our live session. So today we have completed our poem 5, A Legend of Northland, written by Phoebe Carey. Thank you very much.